So we talked about the benefits of systematic trading. We talked about why potentially you would want to get into systematic over discretionary trading. And now we're going to go through just a little kind of mini course about how to get started. And we're going to start with what I think is the most important and the hardest part of systematic trading, right? The benefits we already went over, but it means you have a robot that can trade for you, or you have alerts set at the beginning of the day. All of the actual hard work is done for you at the beginning of the day because you've already set, hey, if it gets here, I'm going to buy it. If it gets there, I'm going to sell it. A bot is doing that for you maybe, but you have to generate the ideas. So you have to be able to generate ideas in a certain manner that we'll talk about here as well, to make sure that you're able to continue to do this. Because once you have a system that is built and you have a system that makes sense to you, and that's either a robot's trading it or it's kind of on autopilot of you get the alert, you place the trade, so on and so forth, the amount of work you're doing intraday drops down dramatically. So that frees you up to what is, again, I believe the most important part of systematic trading, the most important thing that everyone should spend their time on, what I spend probably 90% of my time on, that's idea generation. Because I have a system, hopefully that system works. We know that the system potentially won't work forever, or it won't work in certain markets. So you want to generate new ideas. You want to generate new systems. Now, if you're not even there yet with your first system, you have to generate the idea for the first one. So here's some kind of criteria of what I think you need to think about when you're looking to generate ideas. So the first one, it needs to be objective. And well, by that, I mean, that's not our objective to generate an idea. It means it cannot be subjective. So let's say a couple ways to generate ideas is, read books, listen to podcasts, watch the Trade the Pool live stream every morning, things like that. Look at what other people are trading and then try to find something that makes sense to you and go from there. But it has to be objective. So when you're looking at it, an objective strategy would be like, I like stocks that gap up and then break below their 9 EMA. It's a very objective strategy, because what we'll talk about later is for testing it and trading it, it has to be something like this. If it's, I kind of like when charts are starting to roll over and look a little bit weak and then start to break down. There's so much subjective thinking in there that it will be much harder to turn that into a real legitimate strategy you can kind of put your finger on and test and to program and to do all those things. So make sure whatever you're looking for is very objective. This is why you'll actually see systematic traders talk a lot about indicators, because if it's, this line is crossing that line and that is my instance to make or not make a trade, then great, right? That starts a process that I can then start going down and testing, right? Again, price crossing the 9 EMA, right? That'd be a simple one. So, okay, X period, 2-minute closing candle below the 9 EMA. Great, that's a trade that we'll take. An opening range break. I'm going to wait for the first 30 minutes of market action, and then when that range breaks, I'm going to take the trade. That's a very good starting point. And then you could start to ask yourself, on gaps or on strong stocks or whatever it is, but at least your beginning is very objective, something that you can really point your finger at and say, there's no kind of funny business about whether or not this would be a setup. And the reason for that is it has to be testable, right? We need to be able to test this setup. So for example, if I'm going to go through an opening range break strategy, I can very easily test that, right? And we'll talk about that in the back testing part of this, but I can go through and I can objectively test what is this objective kind of setup. Again, to use my example of, oh no, it's the Elliott wave ABCQ pattern, or here's a bat pattern, or some of these weird things that people trade. If that works for them, fantastic, but it's not objective, therefore it's not testable, right? Think when we are systematic traders, we are thinking more like scientists, and we are thinking less like somebody who's gonna just trade based off of feel. So if I'm building you a scientific article, it has to say, here is, people who eat too much X experience Y. So, okay, so those two things, I need to know all of the parameters so that it's objective. It's not just, hey, if you eat too much junk food, it's bad to you. It's like, okay, how much is too much, on what frequency, at what time frame, and then I need to be able to test it. I need to be able to go in and test to see if this is something that makes sense. Last but not least, got to be programmable. And by programmable, we just mean just that, right? Because the idea is eventually, with everything that you want to be able to do, you want an objective setup that you can then test and that you can then program. And we'll get to this example here where what we're looking for, we'll just use the example of an opening range break setup. This is objective. I can define an X period opening range. It is testable because I could either go through and manually or programmatically or however I could test this setup to see if it works. And again, I can program it because even if it passed objective and it passed testable, if it wasn't something that was programmatic, if it wasn't something that I could literally, put into and build an indicator or whatever it is, that wouldn't help me very much because this idea of I want to essentially outsource the trading, right? Eventually, I want to be able to either have a robot scan for all the opening range breaks that meet my criteria and take the trades for me and put out the stop loss and put out the profit target and do all that for me. Or I want to build an indicator to set an alert against, or I want to be able to set an alert myself at a certain time of day. There's all of these things that I want to do to offload the kind of tediums of trading and the things that humans are bad at, which is, staring at a million charts and looking for an exact setup to happen. You hear this from discretionary traders all the time is, oh, I missed the setup. Oh, I missed the setup. We don't want to miss the setup. So that's why we have a robot or we have some sort of an alerting system to alert us when the setup is occurring. So right, this is a perfect example of something that may or may not work. I know there's a lot of people, there's a couple of people who hang out with us in the live trading chat room that trade an opening range breakout. There's a lot of kind of published articles about this as well, but it meets those criteria. It's very objective. You're either breaking the opening range or you're not. You don't have to squint your eyes or tell yourself a story whether you're doing it. It's something that is testable. I can go through and I could either manually scroll back in video over the past 6 months and just look at every day for the opening range or program it into a system. And then I could very easily build an indicator. I could very easily wait for the first 10 minutes of the day and then just set alerts all around the opening range. I can get to my goal of being systematically trading these things as opposed to hunting and pecking and trying to be really discretionary about it.